Hi, my name is Michael Emanuelian, and today we're going to talk about fairy tales and gender roles. So, to first kind of understand what we're going to be talking about and how gender roles are affected by fairy tales and the movies that we've seen throughout the last 50 years, we need to understand the feminist theory, which is the way in which we'll go about kind of viewing these fairy tales. So, to start, the feminist theory is a theory that is part of the feminism experience, which kind of focuses on how women are discriminated, objectified, sexually objectified, and the stereotypes in which women face throughout history and through the movies. This theory helps provide a way to look at one of the biggest social issues we know today, which is gender roles, and the struggle for equality of the sexes, and in the way in which kids of this generation are growing and learning about gender roles in society. We apply this theory to literature and ethics today through sometimes very simple and something almost all kids experience, fairy tales. So by taking this theory and applying it to fairy tales, we can break down and understand the effects that these stories have on kids and the way in which we can remodel these stories to create a stronger image for our female characters and develop more strong and independent women of the future. And to kind of round out our information, we want to understand the feminist theory, but we also need to kind of get a background on fairy tale history and understand where these came from. So to kind of get better context with that, we kind of need to start from the beginning. And fairy tales are something that is believed to have started in the Bronze Age. They gave birth to fairy tales before writing was created. Thus, these stories that we know today have really evolved and have changed, but once it's gone on paper, it's kind of developed and solidified itself in history. So some of the most famous storytellers and creators in the most well-known stories today are from Charles Perrault and the Brothers Grimm, and of course Walt Disney. These storytellers have brought us classics such as the Mother Goose fairy tales, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and so many more. Now, what these stories have in common, especially since being brought to the big screen generally, is their female character, who's in some sort of distress or danger. She waits and hopes for the Prince Charming, the man, to come save her. These fairy tales are meant to be entertaining and create a wonder in children, but they also have the potential to harm and cause developmental issues in our children regarding the gender roles and social norms as well. Now, these fairy tales have not just been shown in literature, but movies, television, major theme parks, focused on bringing these worlds to life. There are several stories that we can use in our work today. So some fairy tales that we can kind of use to talk about gender roles and the effects that these stories have on kids are Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. These stories have in a sense, been created to kind of all have this woman who's necessarily in distress, waiting for Prince Charming. There's a lot of things that go into really breaking down and identifying how gender roles exist. Since, the early 90s, there have been more movies that have come out, such as like Mulan, Moana, Princess and the Frog, Brave. These are fairy tales that have begun to kind of change and develop a stronger sense of gender roles and develop, kind of a better idea of who a woman is in society today versus some of these older movies that we're going to talk about, but are still very relevant and still very much watched today. These movies kind of play off of each other and can lead to some confusion that will definitely need to be addressed as we go forward. Now, we have a movie here on children with defining their gender roles. And gender roles, according to Wineclaw, are patterns of personality traits, mannerisms, interests, attitudes, and behaviors that are regarded as either male or female by one's culture. Gender roles are largely a product of the way in which we are raised. It may not be a conformance with one's gender identity. There is a research that actually shows that as society changes, the genetics and environment influences gender roles as well. And this is important to understand as we kind of create a direct correlation that over the past 100 years, since 1900s, the revolution of women, there's been a strong change in how women are portrayed in society. Um, Not only that, but the effects that kids have, or the way in which they're affected. Not only that, but the parents as well. So watch this movie. It's absolutely fantastic, and it asks a lot of kids questions about gender roles, and not only that, but ask parents the same questions, and hearing how their kids respond, and kind of getting a really good sense of, wow, this is what we're like in society today. How do we go about making it better? So, having just watched that video, we kind of get an understanding for what do kids see when these watch, these movies. Um, Now, as adults, we kind of overlook or we don't see some of these major themes as being a big deal. Kids are very, very, very much influenced at an early age. They see things, they pick up on things that we don't necessarily see, or that we don't necessarily pick up on as well. And as adults, we can be unaffected or don't even notice things because we've already developed our own view on gender roles. Kids in the movies see that there's, the women are meant to do chores in these movies. They see that they don't have strong, independent role models in these female characters, and they have to wait for a man to save them. Um, there's a lot of things that kids are watching and they're seeing and picking up on, and how they're kind of taking it in and how they're expressing it. That video is a great example. So to kind of test this, I actually spent some time with my nieces and nephews and watched some movies with them. We watched a few different movies. Um, they're all ages 4 to 9 years old, and they came over to watch some movies and answer some questions. Now, they watched Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. The kids loved them. And when they were done, we asked them some questions. So they were questioned, are boys stronger than men? Do you want to be like the princess? Should girls do chores? They were also asked if they wanted to be like the female character. Um, so through the course of the survey, which was very interesting, um, all but one said that boys are stronger than women. Um, the kids watched, and what they saw was that the man was kind of in charge, and he was the stronger one, and he was the one who kind of rescued and did save the day. Do you want to be like the princess? Um, Two of the kids said they did. The rest said no, um, because once again they didn't think that they were the main character, the cool character, the important character. And then just kind of in reference to should girls be doing all the chores? All but one of the kids said yes. They all thought, you know, and this is from their home experience as well, that girls are supposed to do the chores and dad goes and works, or, in this case, the prince comes and saves the day. The results were extremely interesting, and one of the strongest and one of the most kind of influential feedback that I got, the girl isn't smart, was a phrase that was used by my 9-year-old niece. And that resonated, and it was actually really sad to hear. Um, so the following night, we watched Mulan, The Princess and the Frog. Same questions and very different results. The kids witnessed strong female characters and rather fall into older gender roles. These characters were visualized to be female characters as strong and independent. The kids saw characters stand up for themselves. These female leads stand up for themselves, be strong and independent. And when asked which movies they liked better, they all agreed that the newer movies, like Mulan, they liked a lot better because they thought it was nice to see everyone seem equal and to see these female characters be strong like the men, and kind of develop that point where they are, know that everyone's equal, which is extremely. So, first long-term effect, obviously, is gender roles can be more confusing for kids. Um, this is a very long-term effect. As kids, they're influenced at a young age. If they don't understand gender roles, if they believe, coming up that boys do this and girls do this, and if you do it differently, you're weird, or you get made fun of, or you get laughed at, as we saw in the movie previously. That's a very, very confusing time for kids. And it will have repercussions, because as these kids grow up, they begin to mimic and use previous experiences, and the things they have seen developed for their social cues is going to shape who they become as adults. And where that comes into play is they're going to have kids of their own. If we have kids that are growing up under these specific gender roles and under these very specific things that society, dictates, or based on what they've seen just in movies and TV and everything like that, they're going to have an effect on kids in the future generations. That is something that will have continual generational change. Now, how do we make changes to kind of counteract this? So first would be changing stories. So it's tough to go back and try and change Cinderella. It's tough to go back and change a lot of these well-known stories. But the process has already begun. Recently, Beauty and the Beast just came out. They developed Belle to be a stronger character, a smarter, more independent thinking woman. And movies are continually coming out that are creating these strong female characters, these driven stories by female characters that take the lead and don't live to be the minimal character. So it's tougher to change the stories, but creating the same kind of wonder and that same kind of story, but making the characters a little bit stronger, making it a little bit more modern is crucial. Second, having meaningful discussions with your kids. They are certainly able to watch these movies, but you can show them these old videos, but it's also important to have discussions with them after. Talking to them about what they saw, talking about, what they thought, what they noticed, and making sure that they're not just watching something and being thrown out into the world. They're getting to watch something and coming back and having a discussion with their parents so they can better understand what they saw and the things that are right and the things that aren't wrong. And really just creating a path to a brighter future. Developing strong gender role understanding at a young age is crucial. It's not a society of just boys and girls. Girls stay at home, guys go to work. It's a very different world. And a lot of old movies, a lot of old cartoons, a lot of old children's stories don't represent that. And because of that, there's confusion, especially conflicting with a lot of the news stories that come out today that are meant to create a better impact on kids. So just making sure that we're kind of creating a path where kids can enjoy, be entertained as they were meant to be, but also make sure that we're taking the time to acknowledge what they're seeing and kind of correcting any old stereotypes that need to change. So, in summary, there is a social responsibility to either correct the teachings of these stories or begin to alter stories to project a better image that will better shape the future. What kids see now will impact them, how their parents interact with them, and how adults interact with them and kind of show them, hey, this is what was okay and this wasn't okay. And you shouldn't be like that, or you shouldn't think like that, because it's not okay anymore. Having those discussions, creating meaningful impacts, and making sure that our future is kind of set. These stories have promoted unacceptable stereotypes and continue the gender role debate and hurt development of women's equality and development in society today, as well as hurting future development. So the responsibility is on us. There is already new stories, new classics that are already coming out, but these past classics, they can't always stay the same. There needs to be change, and there needs to be a stronger influence on our kids.